Welcome to the Behavioral View, presented by CentralReach. Join hosts, Dr. Shannon Hill and Dr. Nissa Van Etten, as they explore cutting-edge topics in behavior analysis with expert guests. Stay informed, stay inspired. This is the Behavioral View.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Behavioral View. We're really excited for this episode because we are coming to you together and in person from the CR Unite 2025 conference in Chicago. And we have invited some of our friends to come and talk about what they're hearing, what questions they have, what they're excited about, anything. And we're not scripting. We've asked our customer guests to come in and give us some real honest feedback on thoughts that they're having as they sit in these sessions. Also want to hear from the rest of our panel on things that you're hearing that you really liked, that you're enjoying, what's exciting you, all of the good things coming forth. We're not trying to make this one a CEU. It is going to be very CentralReach oriented. So those of you who are looking for that, don't worry. We'll give you another episode that is CEU related. Let's start with some introductions. Hi, I'm Shannon Hill. I'm editor-in-chief at CentralReach Institute. And with me always on the Behavioral View is my friend Nissa, who is
Director of Clinical Training and CR Institute.
Okay, you guys are going to have to yell just a little bit more. Yeah.
And I'm the Director of Clinical Training and CR Institute.
Great. The fun of being in person. All right. And we've had a mission this year to introduce as many of our BCBAs internally as possible to the Behavioral View listeners and viewers. And I'm really excited to bring Amber. So Amber, tell us a little bit about you, what you do at CentralReach.
Awesome. I'm Amber Ledesma. I am a BCBA. And at CentralReach, I am a customer success lead, which means I help our customers use the product and get value out of the product. I work with some of our biggest customers, so I help them brainstorm, we want to do this thing. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's talk about mine.
When you were operating as a clinician, what were you doing?
I worked at a very large ABA company who used CentralReach. So I used it as a customer, flipped over to the other side of the Zoom screen, and I used it for data collection. I taught our company how to use the clinical module. Yeah.
So you were always the data nerd. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. Yes. Okay. He thought I worked for CentralReach when I worked for the ABA company. Moved. They were like, didn't you already do that?
That's great.
Perfect fit.
And we have a very special guest today. And Alana, I like for everyone to introduce themselves so that we get the pronunciations of the names correctly and everything about you that we need to know.
Great. My name's a mouthful. It's Alana Faluga. I'm the Director of Quality Assurance for Above and Beyond Therapy.
Okay. So tell us just a little bit about Above and Beyond.
Of course, it's a large company, multi-regional. We have clinics and we do home-based services. We also work in the school setting. Our biggest region would be Omaha, Nebraska, followed by Georgia, and then North Carolina. But it's a really nice, it's just the culture of the company. It's so friendly. Everybody collaborates, and we really just work with everyone from the ground up. We really try to bring our RDTs in and encourage them to become BCBAs if they're interested in the track. Yeah, it's been a really nice experience growing with my company.
Lovely. That sounds great. And then that's quite a regional juxtaposition there in Omaha, Georgia.
Yeah, I started working, when I started working, I worked primarily in Nebraska, so it's been nice to move around as the company has grown.
Have you seen very much differences regionally?
Oh, yeah. With funders mostly.
Right. Yeah.
But also with expectations of clinicians, I think that varies dramatically across regions as well.
Yeah.
In Nebraska, Omaha, where we were, was pretty much a service desert when we started there. So we tried to bring in as many qualified clinicians as we could to the area to build it up and offer the services that kids need.
And what made you decide that you wanted to come to CR?
I wanted to come to here. I just couldn't get away. But this year it was the outcomes-based care that really drew me here. That's something we've been focusing on, just really learning how to better track outcomes across the company. It's been a priority for us.
Wow. Okay. So this has definitely been a hot topic at CR Unite this year.
Yeah. And no one cracked the code. That is not only a hard topic, but what are the objectives that we track for outcomes to demonstrate to funders that we are moving in the right direction for each individual learner? Exactly. And the lack of standards for assessments overall, it just makes it so difficult to track from a multimodal approach. It's just so difficult. And we've been focusing on that so much. This should be easier. There should be an easier way to do this. So when I heard the talk yesterday about assessments, I was really drawn in.
Okay, so let's clarify. Which talk was that? Who were the speakers?
It was Nessa's talk about the aim measures and just learning how CR is going to implement outcomes tracking across multiple modalities, which I'm excited about.
Okay, so Nissa, do you want to tell everybody who's not here what we're talking about with AIM?
Yep. So we hosted a conversation about holistic approach to treatment and really looking at assessment to treatment modalities. Allison Fraser has joined our team. She is I think it's the senior product manager of assessments. I apologize if that is the incorrect title, but I know she's overseeing the assessments team and kind of the future directions. CentralReach owns the ABLES and APLES, which we are calling CR assessments. AI measures will come into the CR assessment suite of products, and our customers will be able to utilize AI measures with the assessments fully for their learners. And I think what's really exciting about that is the AI measures assessment tool is very similar or normed like the Vitalant. So Dr. Fraser, who is the developer of the AI measures assessment, has really done a wonderful job norming the assessment tool and really making it available to clinicians to understand how it supports individualizing targets for children with autism or adults with autism. And I think one step further, we're moving into computerized adaptive testing, where if you score a specific area, it will suggest the next areas to score. And I think that's something we've heard is very cumbersome to clinicians, right? When we look at the APLES, and I think it's 2,500 skills, it becomes overwhelming. I see Amber nodding.
Yeah.
So really reducing that, I have to assess everything, and I can start to allow the technology and the research that Dr. Fraser has done to drive where we make the decisions.
Well, there's a lot of deep diving that we can do there. I want to bring Amber into the conversation just a little bit. Since you have so much contact with our customers, what do you hear about the assessment process and what they're wanting?
So typically a company will sponsor certain assessments and they'll say, you can use the VBMAP, you can use the ABLES, you can use whatever it might be. You have to do one of these assessments because our payers require it, but you do the one that's most appropriate for the children, for each child. And if you age out of this one, then this one is the next one. And they might sponsor a battery of assessments depending on age and skill level. And then it's just a matter of, and it varies. So some funders are like, you have to do an assessment. Do they look at it? Do they care about it? How much weight do they put in it? Or is it just, yes, check a box, you did it? Versus like, why aren't they making gains and having to really justify the gains they made or didn't make? And so it varies wildly of like how seriously they take the assessment and how important it is to continue treatment.
All right, so Alana, what are you guys trying to do? What are you hoping for, and how can we help?
And then I would say over the last 2 years, we've been standardizing our assessment processes. We try to give our clinicians as much freedom as possible to pick the assessments that they deem appropriate. Quick overview, obviously, but there are so many restrictions by funders now. So we started requiring this along with this and that. And it's a big demand on the staff, especially for the ABLES. It takes me a week to do the ABLES for what I don't know how anyone can do it with 10 hours. Yes. But really just trying to find a way to better tie in our interventions to our assessments, train staff to do one specific assessment. We don't want to restrict them, but if we do, we want a way to track the outcomes and make that easy to use and help them build their programming. Where none of that's automated, just give you suggestions, but having it all tied together with the data collection platform and having a way to track all of those results with programming would just be amazing. It would be revolutionary.
We're trying.
I was going to say, everything you're saying sounds like what we're hoping to accomplish in the next couple of years with our assessments, and understanding that the biggest problem is the overwhelming amount of time it takes to administer the assessment. And then from there, not even just the time component, the skill level that clinicians have to select the appropriate goals. And then even further, that I think is really important is that the goals that aren't just, okay, this is what the assessment told me, but this is what is truly important to the learner.
Yeah.
Really important to that learner, because this might be appropriate, but that's not going to, for lack of a better saying, unlock their potential, give them access to the reinforcements within their environment.
Yeah. I have a great example from the other day. I had someone put into programming, client will tax 100 items. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting goal. How are you tracking that? And they said, it's from the assessment. And I was, that's great, but we need to break it down and figure out a way to track it. We can use it as a base for our goals as well. So just also having that additional component where if we're focusing on one assessment, we have a system we can train staff better on implementing those goals.
Yeah, we talk a lot I sit in a lot of professional development coursework. There's a whole lot of talk about your assessment is not your curriculum. And your track and grid is not your guide for what you necessarily choose next. Even Dr. Partington has said that. It takes some clinical experience. You really need to know the ABLES. As you said, it is very hard to know the ABLES, especially the way Dr. Partington knows the ABLES. Nissa, tell us a little, and I'm putting you on the spot because you've been the most involved on the assessment side. You have so much ABLES experience. So how are we trying to make that process easier? And let's do it two ways, because some of us are going to be really excited about the idea of being driven towards something, and some of us are going to be very scared of that. So what are we keeping this in balance?
And so there are a couple things in process currently that relate to the assessments. The first one is the ontology project that we talked about at CR Unite here. We've got a team of experts really trying to build the underlaying and the foundation of structuring our unstructured data. So that component is happening. It's been happening since last year, and we're really trying to understand all of the data that we have and really matching language. When we take the technology and a lot of the data that we have, when I say it's unstructured, one, we have different structures across every organization and how they're collecting data, how assessments are interpreted, the language used. We are just trying to provide it's almost a dictionary for the data, saying when it says receptive, this might include all of the things that would include receptive instruction or receptive language. So that's happening on one end. And then on the other, we are beginning to capture survey data from BCBAs to indicate what areas are they programming for, what is the most significant to the learner. And we're allowing that data to start to help us inform where should we take the ABLES and ABLES, right? And if we rename the ABLES and ABLES or do the next versioning, using the data, the survey responses, and then really working with the subject matter expert team to develop the next version that will support clinicians in honing in on what's the most effective for the treatment we provide versus 1,900 or with the two combined 2,500 skills. And then Dr. Fraser is pulling in his expertise in psychometric testing to understand growth scores and the CAT-based adaptive testing, and bringing that full circle to provide something that is more efficient, that is based in evidence, and that is also based in data.
Can I just ask, I think you mentioned in the setting yesterday that one of the new versions may omit, or I don't know if it was omit, but might be more ABA funder focused, where the academic domains would be more functional or not even included.
Yes, I think these are all preliminary results. The results of our preliminary survey, I think we had over 800 BCBAs respond, and a lot of the areas that were top decile responses were what we associate with the diagnosis of autism. So social communication, responding, adaptive living. And then the areas that the survey respondents indicated were not focused on were those academic skills that associate with what we hear in the funder world that are not appropriate for us to be teaching. We're considering. I think that they are appropriate if they are functional.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother debate we can have.
I'm going to be in that debate too, because I filled out the survey and so many of the questions were, when I saw the results, my answers were very different because I come from an adult services background.
Yeah.
And so I just want to put a little plug in there. I know, but I hope it doesn't mean it goes away. I hope it means it comes to for stratification, where if you are working on those skills, you can still get to them. Can we?
The other day at lunch, I was talking with a group and they were like, oh, by the way, in Idaho, this certain payer said they can't do toilet training anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? Talk about the basic functional quality of life skill, but this payer says you can't work on it because it fits in a certain category.
And I think that is the debate component of the assessments may move in towards this is what funders will approve and what we see a majority of the field is working in. But there are those of us that are true radical behavior analysts we're going to teach the skills, and perhaps they're not within the funded space. We've got a lot of teachers and educators that utilize the assessments. We also have clinicians that are working in other spaces, private pay, working for vocational rehab, where we do have to keep the skills embedded. They may just not be included in the updated version or the CAT-based version.
We just have to get clever with our report writing as well. Everything can be tied into the description of deficits. So we need to make sure we're using behavior analytic terminology when we're writing goals, so it's so easy for them to turn around and reject a goal. Yes.
And we were also talking about if you write the toileting goal as a behavior reduction goal because they are aggressive when they need to have their pants changed and they're aggressive when they're wet or like whatever, then maybe you can work on toileting because that's the behavior goal and it's a safety goal and but you have to write it in a certain way.
Very interested to know who they want to do that instruction. Behavior analyst. Okay. And sometimes it's just very confusing.
Right. I think they're going to be started.
I could go on all day. Okay. So we've got about half of our time left. I do want to give some room to talk about some of the other sessions as well. Alana, things that are resonating with you. Amber, what are some things that you're hearing from customers as they go through sessions? What are people liking about?
The AI information has been very helpful as someone that's targeted, but not on the tech side of everything. It's been helpful to have a deeper understanding of how to use platforms and how that will help us in the future as things are changing in the field and vendors are getting more difficult to work with. So that's been really enlightening for me, and everyone seems to be excited about it and asking a lot of questions. That's very
I do think like when we start comparing from a few years ago when we first started talking about AI at CR Unite, the difference in what people are saying is just astronomical.
everyone's into it now. We have to.
Every year, Jeet, our director of applications, we do a presentation on Sierra Mobile, like where are we now, what's coming next. And so last year we presented and we talked a lot about note draft. And there was this huge controversy and, oh, should you be doing this? And is this right? And what are your safeguards? And blah, blah, blah. The whole end of the presentation just got taken over by note guard. And I was like, it's just a feature. It's optional. We're doing it the right way, but it's optional. And it just became the whole focus. And this year when I was like, oh, and note guard and blah, 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 like crickets, nobody asked a single question. They were just like nodding. And I was like, okay, moving on.
And I understand where people so skeptical. And now I'm reaching out like, how do I test it? Where just know how difficult it is to write notes for RBTs and even BCBAs. We never write another note again. We'll all be thrilled. So I do need to test it. I've been told that if I don't get on board with AI, I'm going to get left behind, and I've embraced that now. And I'm trying to catch up.
One of the most interesting statements that I heard made, and it's not that I hadn't thought about it, but maybe I haven't been brave enough to say it. And Tom Fraser, who is now our Chief Clinical Officer, said it in the Scientific Advisory Board, however many days ago that was. I'm getting conference glaze over, but that when we talk about bias in AI, we have to remember the relative comparison. That yes, there's always going to be some bias, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is more biased. And even if there is some bias there, we may be less biased than the human being that was writing it to begin with. So that is something to sit and think with. I don't want to negate the importance of looking for bias in our data sets, especially those training data. But at the same time, sometimes our fear is bigger and more disproportionate than it actually needs to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like when something is new, a new technology comes along, we're aiming towards, we want it to be 100%. It's never going to be 100%, but is it going to make things more fair? There wasn't a lot of conversation about that in the beginning. It was mostly about how is it going to be unfair
And take our jobs and replace us.
Yeah.
The more I realize you still need that human oversight of it.
Absolutely.
My biggest concern is I always train people to write their notes and tell me what the data does not reflect. Tell me what the data doesn't show. Was that different from yesterday? And things like that. So I really want to test it out and see how it works, see how it frames my words. But I like that there has to be oversight of it before there's any submission. So at the end of the day, we're still responsible for it.
I do think that's the next thing. We've really worked on fear of adoption, and more people are using it in their everyday lives. So I think that's helped with people feeling a little less fear. But at the same time, the job has changed. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to know how to write a treatment plan or how to assess the goal or what this assessment is doing.
Yes.
So we have to still know our signs and we have to go behind and say,
I'm so excited to hear about the automated treatment plans. Because that's such a burden for us. I'm a nerd. I love a treatment plan. I could write them all day. But rich people do not enjoy that, and it's a real demand for them. So I was very excited, even if it just populates the basic information where the AI can interpret.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal.
So I think Nissa and Neighbor are both involved with that project.
I've seen some great prototypes, and I'm like,
They would also do this.
oh my gosh.
And does it generate the goals report from your learning tree, or is it more on the assessment?
So
All
not
of
yet.
that.
Yeah, our goal is for it to do all of that current in its current pre-version 1. So we have all these different versions. So it's really an alpha, as we call it. So it's not available. It's not something that's out. And I think we said this in a couple of different panels, in that we don't want to release anything that is client-facing and clinical in the spirit of the crawl, walk, run that we always share. And that these types of products really are requiring clinical oversight, clinical investment. So the first kind of V1 we have right now is just gathering all the data that you already have in CentralReach. So client information, date of birth, diagnosis, treatment team, and then pulling in everything that might be within your learning tree and just populating it for you, saying, okay, according to these 6 months that you've had an authorization, these are likely the goals you're going to be submitting in the notes and forms template. And then even further, what we'd like to have is the graphs already embedded with a section that could be auto-populated. We do have a lot of conversations, and we do need a lot of clinical feedback from the SME team to say, we're not sure about this data. We'd really prefer the clinician to write this in, or we can take the graph, do a visual inspection, have something in there. But again, every single graph will require a button that indicates the clinician has rewritten it or accepts it. Every single button, not just at the end of the template.
I like that. Yeah, and that's a really big feature of our note draft that we talk about is, yes, it populates this paragraph based on the BT's data and the BT's note within the session note, but it's only drawing from the data today. It's only drawing from this session note. And then there's an edit pencil, and there's a, I agree to this. And so it shortcuts the process. It drafts it for you, and then they add their input or they agree. And so I like the idea of if it's populating many inputs, you have to agree to all of them. Because the fear is I'm running short on time, and I'm just like, oh, this is good enough, and blah, blah, blah. So I like the effort of
And one of the things, I mean, in many of the proof of concept conversations, we thought about DocuSign. So many of us have had a DocuSign come through, and you can, at the very top right, have your signature in there. But what we wanted it to do is say, hey, you can write every section, but here's a flag. There's a section we didn't have over. So you can't even complete your preliminary evaluation until you go back and review that section.
yeah, like you have to scroll to
Yeah,
the
so
bottom
you're kind of
before you
looking
can
for
say that
what
you agree
did
to
I
an apple
miss?
search
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah. I love it. The other thing that I was excited about was to hear about a dosage generation. We have an external or an inter-office document that we created that gives an hour's recommendation aligned with the deficits that you've rated. And that's something that we just like to get everyone in the right area for recommendations. And it's been helpful as a training tool. And you were saying that the AIM measures were going to include a dosage generation. So that's another thing that would just stop us from using an external platform and pulling it in.
Absolutely. And I know Dr. Fraser has done a lot of the work on the dosing. He's got a couple of publications, and that is in the AI measures tool. I'm not sure how that will map into CR Clinical quite yet, but I know that is on their roadmap conversation.
Yeah, it is a big deal. I've never had to do it. And so when I hear about clinicians and the ways that they are having to make those determinations, and I think every organization maybe has their own little.
Yeah, I think most of the larger organizations are moving in that direction. Even in my experience, smaller companies tend, not all of them, of course, but they tend to push you into the higher ranges because they're smaller. And so a lot of people are just not trained well on that. They come in requesting 40 hours for teenagers because that's what they've been told to do, and just really not understanding how to align it with core deficits of autism, of what your ranges are for each age rating. So instead of going to each clinician and training them on that, it's a nice tool that they can go through, score all of the DSM criteria, and they get a generation of where they should be in hours. And there's wiggle room, of course.
Yeah.
And then if it's a case that's complex and needs to be outside of the guidelines, we don't use that criteria. We instead just write a rationale for that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And Nissa, you've been in the field for a while. You've probably seen different approaches to doing this very thing.
Yeah, it's what's the word? It's a fine art, I think, and it's hard to train. I think that's the hardest piece that I find in working with behavior analysts is I always refer to the CASP third edition guidelines and the APA funders documentation. The CASP third edition guideline talks about comprehensive versus focused treatment. And one of the conversations I have a lot with the BCBAs I work with is, we're thinking comprehensive. It's either comprehensive to include all of the different deficits associated with the diagnosis for that individual. So reading the diagnostic plan, reading the Vineland to understand it's not picking goals from every section, but what is it that diagnostician identified and diagnosed as associated with the autism? And then taking into account your clinical experience, your access to assessments, and selecting the goals that will really be socially valid for that person. I think we can't say that enough, right? I've got learners that might be a focus program, so less than 15 hours, where we are truly just working on social interactions, reciprocal communication, executive functions. Those are the areas of very focused program. And then I've got learners where there are so many skills to work on, but it's comprehensive. First, we need to learn how to learn. We've got reinforcement effectiveness, understanding how to be with others, and we need a little bit more time with this learner than we would with someone who's really just working on those social interactions. That's social.
I'm waiting to wedge that in, because one of the things that I think that we talked about with Olivia Teal when she was on has to do with whenever your clinical recommendation is for 30 hours and up, and maybe there are some obstacles for family scheduling or family preferences. Maybe they just feel that for whatever reason, they do not want their learner involved in that much time. What do we do? What do we ask for? Do we advocate for the larger number, or do we go with what the family is willing to do? And how are those algorithms going to incorporate family preferences?
Have to adjust
Yeah.
care in that case. And
Yeah.
I think it comes from a good place. We all want our kids to get help that they need and make the most progress. And I think just learning that a little less ABA does not mean they won't make progress, and it's important to take the family schedule into consideration.
Yeah. And I know that you guys don't have the answer to that, because there's just still so many things that we have to think about. But it is one of those questions and things. We want everybody to know that we are thinking about it clinically from a broad perspective. It's not just the data-driven scientific part. We do care about the social validity. We do care about the family input and what the client really wants as well. It's just harder to build those things into an algorithm.
It's very hard. Like clinical AI rules. I'm up all night just thinking about it.
Yeah. All right, we've got just a couple of more minutes, 2 more minutes rapid fire, I guess. So what have you guys personally seen? Alana's done a lot already on telling us what she's hearing that's making her excited, but just from the CR insider viewpoint, or what else are customers talking about at CR Ignite?
I love the enthusiasm. Just everybody is so excited. Whatever it is, everybody's excited about it.
Yeah.
It's AI, outcomes measures, or just data in general. We have this amazing advanced business intelligence tool that lets you visualize the data. And those people walk out of those sessions with like their hair on fire. They're so excited about, what can I do with this data? It's amazing. And so just the passion. And even the schedulers and the admins and the non-clinical folks. Another great thing about this field is you could work anywhere, but you're working at an ABA company and you have that mission in your heart. And the scheduler knows that and carries that with them. And the admin knows that. Like, they're talking about, how do I optimize the data and how do I get this into the system and blah, blah, blah. But they bring that all the way back to, because the kid needs this and it's going to help the kid. And I love that that's like just part, it's baked into every conversation. It's baked into every, I need this feature because the kid.
Yeah, agree. I could listen to Yuki Lamb all day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We should put her on.
We need to introduce her to everybody. So Yuki is our dashboard guru. So she can sit and listen to a clinician and think about everything that you're needing data-wise, and then just find a way to make it not only possible for you to get that data, but make it beautiful. I love beautiful data on
Oh
dashboards.
gosh, I think that's the fun part, is being around a bunch of data nerds. Like, it's been really, like, it's not just me. Everyone's excited.
Yes, yeah. Alana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Amber, thank you. I'm sorry that the one we invited you to for this one was a reduced minutes one, but we want to bring you back for come back one day. So thank you as always. And to everyone who's tuned in, thanks. And we will see you next time on Behavioral View.
Thanks for joining us for the Behavioral View. We'll see you soon.